Hi there. So I'm here with Tate, who is here from Ohio today to tell us a little bit about his grandfather. Tate, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here and talk about my grandfather.
Well, obviously, your grandfather fought in World War II, and I mean, I'm not going to tell this story justice, so I think it'll be better for you to just go ahead and tell us a little bit about your grandfather and what happened to him during the war.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So, uh, my grandfather, he would be about 105 right now. So he's long past, of course, but he's probably one of the toughest mans that I know. He's a hero in my book. Had a very altruistic heart. Uh, he uh, I'll start from Pearl Harbor because back then, when it was bombed, just everyone was angry back then, and he was just very upset. He and his five brothers all enlisted. The youngest was still a baby, so he didn't kind of enlist yet. So he kind of grew up in this small town, which I also grew up in. It was about like 500 people at the time, but it's significantly grown, obviously, since then. Um, he trained for a few years in the States, sometime in Arizona. He was kind of this Morse code operator for a B-27 Liberator, or maybe it was 24. I think it's B-24 Liberator. Um, and he was going to fight on the Eastern Front in Europe. So he was 24 years old when he saw combat. His first mission was his last mission. He was fighting in Italy, and his mission was to bomb Viterbo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The Italians have a funny language. Um, so it was kind of like a German oil and supply for the Germans. So he flew over it, and from Foggia, it's Foggia. It's a hope I'm pronouncing that too. But so his plane was really badly hit. The flak was just coming down hard. It hit part of his wing. It also hit part of the underbelly too. Anti-infantry was shooting, and there was bullets riddled through the whole plane. My grandfather had a bullet in his foot. Uh, I, yeah, I don't. That was I don't know. That bullet must have been really big because it must have been like a 50 cal bullet in his wedged in his leg from from that. So his plane kind of had to lower altitude, and that's kind of dangerous when you're parachuting out. If you're familiar with Band of Brothers, they're like, "Oh, we can't parachute from this height." So um, his plane was because Viterbo is kind of close to the western side of Italy. So his plane is getting closer and closer to the ocean, and he has to jump. So him and his tail gunner gets the backpack on him, and he's like, "Go, go, go!" John is his name. So he jumps out, parachutes, and then he lands in kind of like this forested, bushy area, and apparently his landing wasn't too good because he really hurt his hip really badly. Um, so lucky enough, his parachute didn't have any holes in it. His plane sure had a bunch of holes, but he didn't. He had blisters all over his face from the plants just like scraping him on the landing. Obviously, his hip was hurt. His chest. He had the bullet in his hole too. Except there's a consolation to the story. Some cute little Italian girl came and picked him up and kind of dragged him back to her barn. So she rushed and helped him, and he was kind of able to hobble. And then, she was there in the cottage, but it wasn't too long, maybe like an hour or two. The Germans, knocked on the door and, uh, you know, got him and, you know, like, okay, he's ours. So it wasn't until like 3 days that he was able to get like medical treatment. So he had that bullet in his foot for 3 days. And he obviously had the blisters and whatnot. The Italian woman wiped as much off as she could and kind of, you know, bandaged things as she could. Um, So then he was kind of rushed to a hospital. I think it's Salino Malingo. Um, so my grandfather, he was an Irish Catholic, always believed in God, but like kind of having faced death quite literally. He had these kind of angelic sisters just kind of touching him and just kind of like uh, putting him back together. So it was really relieving, and I think that's really kind of where he found God in a very profound way. The sisters there were nice enough to write on his behalf. They exchanged his POW information. Um, he was about a POW for 3 years. He traveled on the Death March from Moosburg, Germany, up to like Berlin. I don't know exactly where in Berlin. Um, the map that I have is kind of uh, hard to read. Um, so he saw lots of POWs die on the march. He was kind of put into like this cattle barn shed thing, like something that's used for transporting horses. It was there's feces and stuff in it. It was really bad. They were crammed together tightly. Um, but he would travel from camp to camp to camp upwards. But eventually, I think it was like he was 2 weeks in near Berlin, and then General Patton had pushed and liberated the camp. That and it was quite astonishing to him because he's like, "Whoa, I didn't expect it this soon." So he was able to shake General Patton's hand. He was very thankful. Um, and my grandfather came back to America, and this is kind of the really heart grieving part of the story. He was still looking for his buddies on the plane. He ended up being the sole survivor on that plane. He his tail gunner wasn't able to get his own parachute on, and they ended up crashing into the ocean. So they were missing in action for the whole duration of the war. And one of the things that really hurt my grandfather was, the sisters were exchanging his information and his POW, and then all of these other mothers out there. They're like, oh my gosh, this person is on this plane. My son is also on that plane. My son was also on that plane, and just so many mothers concerned for their sons. He was receiving letters in the POW camp asking about their sons, and he's like, I don't know how to respond. Like, I don't know. Maybe they went to another camp. So he was really grieved. He went back to Connecticut. He went to Rhode Island, Chicago, some places in Georgia, and he basically kind of was like he told the families what happened from his side of the story because it really weighed on him because he's like, man, I should have, he helped me put my parachute on. I should have helped him put his parachute on. I should have done this. I should have done this. Why did I, why? So it was really weighing on him heavily, and he felt really bad because he got to be with his mom, but these guys didn't get to be with theirs. So um, I don't know how to describe it or give it justice, but it really showed a lot of compassion he had for his war buddies, and it was pretty crucifying for him, and it really expanded his heart outward, and it definitely showed in his kids. My aunts and uncles have tremendous capacity to love other people. They're very altruistic as well, and I think they got that from my grandfather. He made some pretty deep choices afterwards. He decided to marry his high school sweetheart. He remained in the Air Corps nearest to his hometown that he grew up in. Had 8 kids, raised them all Catholic. Those nuns definitely had a good effect on his faith. And then my father had me, and my grandfather ended up passing away when my dad was only 22 years old from a heart attack. Um, I speculate that my grandfather, he had high blood pressure, and uh, because he wanted to live so badly for those 4 years in hell, like his body was just never normal. So he was always trying to live, 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 and the neurological part of him is just keeps on pushing and pushing and pushing. So I think it came to a heart attack, and a little bit too soon for my father. My he was only 22 when that happened. So yeah, my dad holds him as a hero. I do too, and he was very intentional with his kids and cherished them and disciplined them well. Um, One thing that I often kind of look back to is like, look, I'm only existing today because a parachute didn't have holes in it. A bunch of religious sisters basically patched up all the holes inside him and all the blisters all over his face, like, from bleeding out. And basically, my grandfather's relentless will to to live and to pursue uh till the end at the death march. So he had a tremendous amount of fortitude that I deeply respect in him. And that's kind of the story I have that I'm sharing with you today.
I'd like to say it's a beautiful story that you shared. Thank you so much, Tate. It's heartbreaking for your father and yourself that he obviously passed as young as he did, but the fact that he made it through those 4 years, as you said, of hell, is an incredible feat, and a wonderful sort of story of humanity as well, of the nuns that patched him up and the people that were probably with him throughout those camps. I don't know if he ever spoke to your father or anybody else about his experiences in the time, but I don't know if there was ever any stories of how he maybe got through or what sort of motivated him to get through those years.
He didn't speak much. Most of his things were done in actions. He didn't like speaking about it. He would only say things to his kids like, "Don't ever do that." Like that I like, because he knew the effects of certain things, and the way people felt about uh you know others, like when my father had his cousin pass away and his uncle pass away, uh you know it really taught him a lot about how to grieve. And um my dad really cherished it because he didn't, you don't get taught that. But my grandfather had a very uh high reverence for life, and he kind of just did that in his actions, and it kind of translated into the way the kids lived their lives too, and it really showed. Yeah.
You mentioned how none of his comrades from the plane or his troop unfortunately made it back, but you did mention that he went out and volunteered for the war with his brothers. Did any of his siblings make it back?
Yep, all of them made it back, fortunately. So all five of those siblings ended up making it back. None of them actually were POWs. So only my dad, or my grandfather, was a POW, and a lot of my great uncles, they felt really really bad too. Uh, all of them were in Europe. None of them fought in the Pacific, but they were really grieved too. They were like, "Oh gosh, if I would have been there with my brother, I could have been stationed with my brother. I should have done that. I should have done that." So I think all of them joined the Air Corps. So I don't think any of them were in the Army or the Marines or of that nature.
I mean, the main thing I think is the fact that they all did make it back, and I
Hmm.
think it's been really lovely hearing about your grandfather, about the trials and tribulations he went through, and obviously what happened afterwards as well. That to show what an impact that the war had on him and those around him. As we come to the end of this interview, obviously I'll say thank you again, but I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say. Obviously, as this is the anniversary of VE Day, 80 years since the war finished. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to finish this interview with.
Uh, Victory comes at a price, and it definitely leaves a mark for all generations, and some good for some worse. But my grandfather, he chose the harder path, which is to to embrace joy and to uh, choose the better part, to lead with grace. So yeah.
I think those are some lovely words and a beautiful way to end a really brilliant interview. Thank you so much for being here, Tate.
Yes, thank you.